Do my fans know too much about me?
All right, let's get this over with.
Yep.
Are Dan and Phil in a relationship?
Yes.
All right, bye. Oh, sorry, you wanted more, did you?
Oh.
You want the juice.
Okay.
The tea, the blood, the tears, the
Oh my god.
Veteran YouTubers Dan and Phil announcing they are in a relationship in a video posted on Monday. Jamie, do you have anything to confess?
I do have something to confess. I had no idea who these people were. I genuinely...
Well, brief us then. For those who don't know who Dan and Phil are, yes.
Do you know who? Because you've been
I know who Dan and Phil are
because,
so I have been podcasting for 18 years and on a much smaller scale because podcasting was smaller than YouTube back then. But when Helen Zaltzman and I were kind of people who people knew about in podcasting, Dan and Phil were the YouTubers that British people knew. So yes, I've tracked their careers, yes.
Yeah,
but they basically made videos in their bedroom when they weren't in a relationship and have continued to do that for nearly 20 years.
Yes, and so this video that they released this week basically, answered the question that apparently fans of theirs have been asking for years about whether fan, which is the portmanteau of their names, was just a friendship or whether it was more. Fans kind of built narratives, they made assumptions, they posted theories. A lot in lots of ways they invested a kind of belief into a story. And actually in that video, if you watch the whole video, they talk about the kind of weight of the fan expectations and the kind of invasion into their lives and the emotional toll of living under this kind of glare, and basically saying why they couldn't have come out any sooner about what they were doing and about how their relationship, the truth about their relationship.
Which is why, for people who don't want to sit through the video, what is the reason they couldn't say earlier?
Yeah, they didn't want to be seen as creating like couple content. They want their kind of creative output to remain autonomous. They also were, I think, actually quite fearful of the kind of privacy aspects of it and the boundaries and what kind of attention they would then get together. I bring it to the table because it's about basically parasocial relationships. Parasocial, it was a concept that was coined in the 1950s to describe how audiences developed one-sided relationships with media figures. Basically that idea that we know so much now about the people in the celebrities, YouTubers, kind of pop stars, even you, Olly Mann, people know too much. The kind of repeated exposure and interactions kind of deepen that parasocial relationship. But we have seen a massive pushback recently from some artists, people like Chapel Roan, Mitski, and it has, as far as I can tell, people are no longer writing into a PO box, right? People are able to get very close and intense access sometimes to the people that they are fans of. And, where does that go? Where does that leave the people involved? Is it a good thing? What are the benefits? That's why I've brought it to the table, and I'm hoping you guys will answer for me.
Okay, I mean, talking about when we first heard of Dan and Phil, Felicity, I've got to think when I first heard the phrase parasocial, it's quite interesting to hear Jamie reference something from the 1950s there, because I don't think I heard that term till maybe 2 years ago. It seems to be something that is growing, the sense that you're not just a fan of someone, you expect a two-way relationship in the 21st century.
My issue with the story is that parasocial, like you're saying, you think, oh, I've never heard that and it sounds terribly academic and fancy. I think we've always had, obsessive fans and celebrity culture, and I don't think this is anything new. I think it's certainly been exacerbated by social media and the fact that, your celebs are so much closer to you, and they put out so much more content and it really feels like you're part of their lives and you're inside their house and you know all about them. But in terms of having that obsessive, unhealthy relationship with someone you don't know in a way that is not reciprocated, I don't think that's anything new. It made me instantly think of Princess Diana and her death with like the wailing, hysterical fans when Harry and William weren't allowed to show any emotion and, the whole public was just in an absolute meltdown. And the Michael Jackson trial when that crazy fan was like releasing white doves into the air every time it was, pronounced that he was innocent. I think what frustrates me about this story is that parasocial is this label that you can sort of attach to your life and say, I'm in a parasocial relationship or something. And it's just a way of avoiding accountability for the fact that you haven't recognized that you're lacking in self-knowledge, that you don't understand that you're doing something very, very toxic. You're not in a relationship with someone who you're not in a normal human relationship. And it made me think of sapiosexual, you know, that term that you sort of say, I'm only attracted to people's intellect and their brains, and that makes me sapiosexual. It's like, well, everyone is attracted to, you know, relatively smart people. That's not a label.
Not everyone.
Not everyone, sure, but again, it's just these like labels and terms, parasocial, sapiosexual, which I think it's slightly ridiculous, and I don't really think it's anything new. It's just something that's been exacerbated by social media.
Okay, except Harriet, as Felicity was saying, you know, someone who's developed a relationship with Michael Jackson based on music videos used to be termed as crazy because they've taken the relationship that's clearly a broadcast audience relationship into something more meaningful to them, which is in their minds. But it's a bit different now because these people, Dan and Phil, any YouTuber, any influencer, any podcaster, is encouraged to talk directly to the audience and build a relationship with them and responds to their correspondence and makes them direct message videos. It is actually a real relationship.
Yeah, and that's what I think, even though I agree that it's not necessarily new, I think there are new elements. The rise of social media and the encouragement of like big studios, for example, or big music companies, the encouragement for celebrities, content creators and artists to actively use social media to create a false illusion of intimacy and a false illusion to give people a glimpse into their lives, very highly curated though it might be, the illusion of intimacy and direct access and also direct communication. In the case of Charlie XCX, very famously uses WhatsApp to communicate with superfans. And this creates stronger emotional connections because there's that illusion of a two-way interaction, which wasn't necessarily the case.
If they're texting each other, then it's not an illusion.
I think sometimes the illusion it's the illusion of authenticity, that the line between public figure and fan becomes blurred, and that has turbocharged these parasocial relationships because a lot of these public figures acknowledge and utilize this intimate bonding experience with their fans, and they knowingly push the boundaries for personal gain. For countless creators, like you were saying, their careers actually depend on this illusion of personal relationship with their fans. And I think what's really interesting is how these parasocial relationships are being sort of hijacked for the sake of capitalism and for the sake of activism as well. So aid organizations, PR firms, companies are increasingly moving from message to affinity. So not necessarily what the message is, but who is delivering the message, and harnessing the affinity those people have with their fans or their listeners or their readers to either sell something or to push a message. So this is, I think, that element, that social media turbocharged element in a hyper-connected world. I think that's what's new.
Yeah, and I suppose the companies behind it as well, Jamie, that are pushing people in that direction. I mean, Dan and Phil, clearly instinctively wanted to build a relationship with their audience and wanted to have that two-way street. But if you didn't, if you were someone who just wanted to make funny videos, your videos won't rank unless you do that stuff. So the likes of Google and Meta are pushing you into doing this two-way relationship. It's hard to just be a broadcaster.
Also, the kind of the content that now is successful is very different to what was successful. I mean, you're right, it's to do with the algorithm, but the content of, like, basically people want to know, get ready with me, a day in the life, what I wore today, like all of this stuff that is basically bringing you into a way. It's not like watch me play this video game or whatever. This is now like, I want to know about the kind of makeup of your day and who you're in a relationship with and what your actual, where you live. That all of that is being pushed up the algorithm. So people are doing it more. So people are giving away more. And I think, like, the hope is that there is a turning point coming, or that some fans are basically watching people like Chapel Roan push back and say, actually, I'm not going to accept that you call me by my real name when you see me in the street, or I'm presenting a character, and that's if you're a fan of the character. And maybe we have to question about, like, the intimacy of, you know, like Harriet was saying, the kind of monetization of it. I think it's a tough one because people are always going to want to make money, and if making money is by creating these like parasocial relationships, then I think that will always happen. But hopefully, you know, as we move forward, younger people will look at these at the artists that are trying to put boundaries up and trying to say, like, I want to protect my own life, and recognize that actually that's a good thing.
I suppose it's also, from the point of view of the audience, though, a feeling of you're relating to the content creators, Felicity, but then you yourself can share something kind of mundane and pedestrian about yourself, which is maybe healthy. Like, we talk all the time about this being an unhealthy relationship. You know, you're idolising someone you don't really know. You've bought into a false narrative. I was looking at the comments on this Dan and Phil video, and the best rated ones were women who are clearly now in their late 20s who liked Dan and Phil when they were teenage girls. And they were basically saying, yeah, whatever, lads, I've got the washing to do and got to take the kids to school. So it's a sense of, these people have been there throughout my entire life, and it's my real life as an audience as well. And that is a deeper relationship than used to be possible.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess I increasingly feel that anything other than a like actual real relationship people find easier these days. I was reading some really like strange articles about people falling in love with ChatGPT. It just seems to be easier and less risky than having a human relationship. And, you know, seeing like, you know, I was thinking about Taylor Swift. I watched a documentary about Taylor Swift the other day, and the fans on it were actually really sweet and really endearing. And you could tell that they really relate to her, and she has helped them through all sorts of situations. And one of them was talking about how Taylor Swift's music is all about like the permission to yearn and the permission to be a teenage girl and everything that kind of encompasses. And it was quite convincing, but I would still say it's probably easier to have a relationship with Taylor Swift than having a real human friendship, which is going to be full of all the kind of nasty bitchiness and all that sort of thing. You know, I'm not saying that it's always going to be unpleasant or horrible. I'm sure some of the, especially in a world with so much bad news and awful things going on, you know, if you see that Taylor Swift's got engaged and you want to write a comment and be like, OMG, I can't even handle how great this is, and knowing full well that she's never going to give a shit about your wedding, like, that's fine. If you can keep it together, fine. But it does strike me as increasingly it's just easier and nicer to have relationships which are one-sided, basically, and I find that slightly sad.
But they can also, I think, on the flip side, what's really sad is that parasocial relationships can also create this sense of entitlement and this kind of very misguided sense of deserving reciprocity. So fans can feel like they deserve the attention from their parasocial amour, or they deserve interaction because of the time and energy that they've invested in them. And when that is spurned, or when their expectations aren't met, then they can turn on their object of parasocial affection. I think Selena Gomez is a really interesting example of that. So she's the most followed woman on Instagram, and she's been very open about her health and her struggles with mental health, which many people have found incredibly helpful and comforting. But when she announced her engagement to Benny Blanco, a lot of fans have kind of been really cruel about him and been really like talking about how they need to break up. There's just all sorts of abuse and harassment and kind of a sense of entitlement to an opinion that can be engendered by these parasocial relationships that I actually think it is incredibly sad, because like we were saying, celebrities today, they don't have the option to opt out of connecting online with fans. What that means is that they are pushed into creating a parasocial relationship that can normalize this behavior that can end up then really hurting or threatening them, which I think is incredibly sad. And it's incredibly sad for the fans as well, who there's a study that showed people with stronger parasocial relationships with celebrities could end up like less satisfied in their real life relationships and less motivated to invest in them. So I do think that it can be incredibly comforting and also incredibly dangerous for both fan and artist.